Today, we are digging into a wild story of power, corruption, and ultimately murder. A story that brought a whole Southern dynasty crashing down. This is the fall of the House of Murdaugh. Everything, the decades of power, the secrets, it all comes down to this one single word. For a guy who seemed to live completely above the law, this was the final shocking reckoning. So, how on earth did we get here? How does one of South Carolina's most powerful men, an attorney from a family of prosecutors no less, end up a convicted murderer? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack right now. Let's start with the moment that just sent shockwaves across the country, the verdict. You have to understand, this wasn't just a conviction. It was the end of a whole era. It was the moment a dynasty's darkest secret was finally dragged into the light. The facts are just brutal. In 2023, after this trial that everybody was watching, Alex Murdaugh was found guilty of murdering his own wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul. It's a crazy reversal, right? The man who was supposed to uphold the law was convicted of the most terrible crimes against his own family. Now, to really get why this verdict was so huge, we've got a rewind of it. We need to look at the century of power that basically was the Murdaugh name. See, the Murdaughs weren't just some rich family. No, they were a full-blown legal dynasty. And what that means is that for generations, one family holds this incredible amount of power over the legal and political world in their area. For the Murdaughs, the law wasn't a job. It was the family business. And their control was just staggering. I mean, think about this. For almost 100 years, a Murdaugh was the top prosecutor for a 5-county area. They had politicians in their pocket, they ran a huge multi-million-dollar law firm, and their local influence was just completely unchecked. In their little corner of South Carolina, they basically were the law. But all that power had a really dark side. You know, behind that respectable family image, a financial time bomb was ticking, a kind of desperation that prosecutors would later argue became the actual motive for murder. So yeah, the murders were anything but random. As investigators started digging, they found this massive, swirling storm of financial fraud and insurance scams. A lawsuit over a deadly boat crash involving his son was about to blow the whole thing wide open. And prosecutors say that's when he got desperate. And you can just see the downfall happening in stages. Alex Murdaugh starts out as this respected attorney, a pillar of the community. But under the surface, financial pressure from years of alleged fraud is building and building. That leads to these crazier and crazier scams, and then, finally, to the most desperate measure of all. Which brings us to the crime itself, and the incredible courtroom showdown that followed. The murders and then the trial became the spectacle that the entire country just could not look away from. The timeline is so simple, it's chilling. In 2021, Maggie and Paul Murdaugh are murdered on their family's sprawling property. 2 years later, in 2023, Alex Murdaugh is tried and convicted for killing them. It's a short timeline for a story with so much darkness and complexity. And oh, what a trial it was. This wasn't some local case that stayed local. It became a national obsession. And why wouldn't it? It had everything: a powerful family, devastating secrets, betrayal, and this unbelievable fall from the absolute highest rungs of society. So, beyond all the gruesome details, why does this case really matter? Let's take a look at the corrupt legacy this dynasty left behind, and what it really tells us about power itself. Because in the end, this trial did so much more than just convict one murderer. It completely ripped the curtain back on an entire system, a system that let this kind of corruption just grow and fester for decades. The Murdaugh case really showed us what a system of unchecked local power actually looks like. It showed how generations of influence can be twisted and used for personal gain, and how massive systemic corruption can just hide in plain sight, all protected by a powerful family name. And that kind of leaves us with a really big and honestly pretty unsettling question. Sure, the Murdaugh saga is a story about one family, but its lessons are universal. It forces us all to ask, what happens when power goes completely unchecked?